So last week, we talked about one of the most important news stories to hit the nation in a very long time, and that was Kristi Noem's self-admission that she took her dog to a gravel pit and murdered it because she didn't want to train it or take care of it anymore.
Might be the most important story of our lifetime.
That's what especially these last 2 weeks. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
I can think of anything else that overshadows it. However, I would be remiss to say that like maybe we got the full story that's going on there, right? Because we got to remember this story came out from a pre-release of her book. So people hadn't really got their hands on the book by then. And most importantly, although she wrote the book, she hasn't had the opportunity to speak for herself.
That's very true. We haven't heard from her. We just read the snippet.
Exactly. We just read the snippet, and maybe we're missing some things. So I thought that we could use our platform for something that's good and get out here and also observe how Hannity gave her some time to sort of speak on the issue.
I think we should both sides this.
I think so too.
I'm sitting on the fence right now.
I really am curious to see what she has to say about her own words.
I was last episode when we talked about this, I was pretty ardently anti-puppy murder.
Yes.
But now I think I might be in the middle.
I mean, you really never know with these things. I'm going to say, like, nothing is black and white.
Nothing is all good or all bad.
Exactly. There are grays. There's always a silver lining. There's always a silver lining. So let's see what Kristi Noem herself has to say about the issue on Hannity.
Governor, I know you have responded. You responded on X on Sunday, and you gave more explanation to this. But you talk about this 14-month-old dog as untrainable. You describe it as a trained assassin. How the dog was killing chickens of a local neighbor, and how the dog even went to bite you, and I believe bit others as well. Tell us in your words why it came to that decision. I mean, unfortunately, dogs that are violent sometimes have to be put down. But I guess people, because you shot the dog. Is there a difference which way you put a dog down? I'm not really sure, but I don't think people understood it. I want to give you a chance to explain.
Well, Sean, you know how the fake news works. They leave out some or most of the facts of a story. They put the worst spin on it, and that's what's happened in this case. I hope people really do buy this book and they find out the truth of the story, because the truth of the story is that this was a working dog, and it was not a puppy. It was a dog that was extremely dangerous. It had come to us from a family who had found her way too aggressive. We were her second chance, and the day she was put down was a day that she massacred livestock that were part of our neighbors. She attacked me, and it was a hard decision. And the reason it's in the book is because this book is filled with tough, challenging decisions that I've had to make throughout my life. And I hope that people understand from this that what the point of the story is that most politicians, they will run from the truth. They will shy away and hide from making tough decisions. I don't do either of those. I tell the truth and I make tough decisions. People attacked me during COVID for keeping my state open. They called me wrong and attacked me night after night on TV for not doing mandates and not forcing people to get vaccines or wear masks. They're doing it again now with this. I just hope people will read the book, find out the truth, because this was a dangerous animal. And I had a choice between keeping my small children and other people safe or a dangerous animal, and I chose the safety of my children.
I was shocked when we learned that Joe Biden has a German Shepherd, that when all was said and done, 24 Secret Service agents were bitten by a German Shepherd, by a big dog. I want to go back to something that you say here. You said you followed the law in your book. What is the law?
Virtually every state has a law in place that says that animals that attack and kill livestock can be put down in situations like this. But I'll tell you, Sean, to farmers and ranchers, they expect it. They know that once an animal like this starts killing just because they enjoy it, that is a very dangerous animal. And that was the situation that we were dealing with. And I'm a dog lover. I've trained dogs for years. I've been around hundreds of them, of course. And so this was a tough situation and very difficult. But that's what happens in rural America many times. And, I hope people do read the facts of the story and truly understand that I'm a mom. And at the time, I had small children, a lot of small kiddos that worked around our business and people. And I wanted to make sure that they were safe, and that dogs that have this kind of a problem, that have been to training for months and still kill for fun, they are extremely dangerous, and a responsible owner does what they need to do and what the law will allow.
A dog trainer friend of mine actually describes every dog as a baby wolf, and they have a pack mentality. And once they get aggressive, it's very difficult to alter and change that behavior. Look at the case of Joe Biden. Initially, we had heard, okay, maybe one Secret Service agent, maybe 3, and then at one point we read 24. In that particular case, if somebody is biting people in large numbers like that, wouldn't it? It's a sad thing to do, but at some point, doesn't it become the responsible thing for the safety of others that you don't allow a dog at least around anybody else at the very least?
Well, and that was our situation, was this dog had come to us from another family that had already found her to be too aggressive. They'd had issues before, and we'd put her through months of training, and we're working with her. It's an unfortunate situation, but one that I hope people understand that they need to hear the truth and not what the media's been spinning. The media continuously, through the fake news, does not always tell the truth, and they spin the story. They did the same thing to me during COVID, and they're doing it again here. I hope people buy the book and read the truth.
So,
all right, the book is available, by the way, online. You go.
My favorite bits of information from that little segment there are, one, the fake news media spun the story that I wrote down in my own words in my book. book where I described doing exactly what the fake news media said I did. And also, this dog was a trained assassin.
Well, the dog, she keeps talking about the dog like the dog has had all of this training, all of this experience. She wrote herself it was 14 months old.
Yes.
What do you? It's a puppy, barely a year.
And it's also like to say, oh, this dog, once it starts enjoying killing, brother, that's you train it. Once these dogs become aggressive, you can't make them not aggressive. Yes, the fuck you can by training it. She probably just doesn't know what she's doing.
Or just give it to somebody else. Like, we were their second family, so we were the dog's last chance. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that's it. You only get two. You only get two.
It's a dog.
And it's like, doesn't the Humane Society exist for that shit?
You would think.
You have organizations dedicated to going and rescuing dogs who have been abused. There are dogs out there that are abused by their owners and become very violent as a result of that. That organizations go, pick up, they house, they nurse back to health, and they train, and then they go on to loving homes.
And there's dogs that quite literally live on the streets that were abandoned that will be taken in and eventually become nice and very loving, very kind dogs.
Yeah.
It's not how it works. You don't just kill a dog after 14 months because you can't get it to listen.
Well, you see, the dog tasted one drop of blood and then immediately switch flipped in him.
Just like all those damn college students across the country
precisely. And then the fake news media picks it up and they pick up my words and they report them accurately.
I really did. I appreciated the Joe Biden's dog spin.
Yes.
I think that's very good. But the more subtle spin I appreciate was that she was saying this story exists in the context of her trying to showcase that she can make hard decisions in leadership. And my question is, you had no other examples? It's like in a job interview where they're like, name one time you faced adversity, and you just come up with the most malicious part of your life.
Yes, and it's
you
also
don't gotta say that.
Wait, I'm sorry, but like, where is the hard decision here?
Yeah,
you know what? Bear with me, because killing a dog seems like the easy way out. If you ask me if you're having problems with a dog, if a dog goes and does something bad and then you just fucking kill it instead of dealing with it, that doesn't sound like the hard decision. Sure, maybe it is morally hard. Maybe it takes a toll on you. Somebody like Chris, I don't really know.
It seems like she's done this before.
Exactly. She mentions that she killed a goat too, because it watched
at the same moment. Yeah,
the goat, it fucking saw what happened and she had to get rid of it or else it was gonna chirp.
She also, I was listening to Chapo Trap House this past week, and apparently in another part of the book, she describes a story where her dad, when she was a kid, played a prank, and the word prank is used very loosely here. Damn right, a crime. What this guy did.
Right, word.
He played a prank on one of his coworkers that they called They used some slur for him because he was missing a leg or something. It wasn't exactly calling him a cripple, but it was something like that.
Slurs for amputees?
Yeah, it was something like cripple, something like that.
Okay, word.
And apparently this guy always complained on the job. They worked on an oil rig, which I would too if I was missing a leg. I'd be complaining up a storm. But this guy complained all the time, so they got mad about it. So what they did was, this guy had a sick day one time. He stayed home from work. And so they cooked up this dude's cat and fed it to him.
Bro's the OG prank YouTuber.
And they were like, how'd you like your meal that we gave you yesterday? And dude was like, it was kind of tough. That's crazy. She puts this in ink.
That's not a prank.
Pen to paper, and you write this down. You're insane.
Bro would love In the Hood pranks. Bro would go fucking feral for those. Holy shit. A good part of this, I thought, was when she's like, I put it down because I don't run from the truth. Yeah, you're not running from the truth. You're telling the truth so you can run from a VP pick. That's exactly what adds to be going on. No sane person is putting that in there thinking that's an admirable story. I'm sorry.
You don't got to tell people every single part about your life. Some things can stay just for you.
Some things live and die in the dark. Frankly, that's
there's an old concept of taking things to the grave with you.
Precisely.
And sometimes you should listen to that. Not everything's got to be shared.
That burden is yours to bear, not mine. I should not be privy to this information. And just again to speak on the Hannity Joe Biden spin on it. Hannity principally in support of killing more dogs for just acting up.
Oh my God, yeah. He was like, well, I mean, if they're just not going to listen, it's sad, but you might have to do it.
Fucking crazy.
What are we talking about, man?
Fucking crazy. I don't think people really talk about killing dogs like that now. I think usually, maybe there was a moment when Hannity was growing up in the fucking whatever olden days he was growing up in, where putting your dog down was for acting bad because people back then were cowards and didn't know how to deal with these things. But, now, in the modern day, when we talk about putting down dogs, it's usually because they have fucking cancer.
They're sick
or something, and their trachea's collapsed, or they just can't function on their own, and we take them to the vet. and give them an injection so they're comfortable when they go. We don't throw them in a fucking gravel pit and shoot them.
You can just Google like Humane Society near me and find a place to take them.
Oh my God, yeah.
I've also loved the framing that some people have offered where it's like, oh, you just don't understand Southern culture. This is just what they do in the South. First of all, South Dakota. Stop telling me that's a southern state. But also, fine. I'll take the framing that maybe it's a thing rural people do. People that live on farms and this kind of thing, go hunting. I just don't believe it.
Exactly.
I reject that.
Sundown towns are also a part of Southern culture.
Yeah.
Maybe some parts, maybe some of this is bad.
Yeah. Oh my God. Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. We've got quite the packed show for you all today. We're again talking about protests.
Yes.
Or I guess lack thereof now, because a lot of them have been facing some violence at the hand of the police.
We're talking about protests being squashed across the country.
And we're talking about anti-Semitism broadly.
Broadly.
Because Congress had something to say.
And increasing a broader definition of anti-Semitism. It's pretty good.
Got lots to talk about. But before we get into the episode today, if you want to support the show, if you want to make me smile, head over to the Patreon.
If you want a joyous tear to flow down my cheek and onto my chin and then drip into my cereal rather than a sad one, go check out the Patreon.
Look, we just set a new goal on our Patreon. If you want to help us get there, go to Patreon and check it out. And once we get there, everyone that's on the Patreon, $5 tier and up,
that's right,
you give me a little surprise each month.
It's a pretty good, dare I say, it's our most substantive goal that we've ever put out there for you all.
Oh yeah, it's going to be big. Look, we're not ready to reveal it yet, though.
It's gonna be huge.
It's gonna be huge.
Come on now. It's gonna the biggest, the best, the most expansive Patreon expansion that in the history of Patreon.
Yeah, so we got a new benefit coming soon. If you want to be a part of that, $5 tier and up, you can help us get there. Once we get there, we'll start it. Hopefully we can do that soon.
It'll be pretty good. But in the meantime, you can always support us 100% for free by going to Apple and leaving a 5-star review like the one we have here today. This one from Gimme Cummies.
Real as hell.
Titled, I Condemn Hamas. Putting it right there in the title, point blank, unambiguously, so that we don't get confused. I appreciate that. Been listening to these boys for about 2 years now, and a Sunday supremacist for most of that time.
Let's go.
So I can say unequivocally that this is the #1 geopolitical podcast in the world.
In the world.
As a straight white man who fell into the alt-right pipeline at a very young age, it was refreshing to have a comedic and engaging podcast reflect the views I started to have as I became radicalized by the woke mob in late 2019, not the all-right ones. I live in the very blue state of Massachusetts, so this podcast is a great way for me to keep up with the horrendous legislation being passed across the country, especially since I deleted the internet cesspool Twitter off my phone. And at one point I would have said it's pretty funny, but now I agree.
It's bad.
App is awful. App is awful. I recommend becoming a patron to avoid being a Wednesday weenie ASAP. Thanks for the content y'all have made throughout the years. And of course, I condemn Hamas.
That's good, because a lot of students in American colleges just don't.
That's what
they
I'm
love
saying.
Hamas.
A lot of students coming in, taking down the American flag at college campuses across the country and raising the Hamas one.
Hamas flag, yep.
And chanting, we love Hamas, we are Hamas, just across, we are terrorists who are Hamas, just across the country. I can't believe it.
They're openly admitting it. You don't need to fact check that.
Exactly. No, please don't look into that one. We have one more review here that came in on Instagram, and it was actually a review on Instagram we missed a while ago, and they humbly reminded us in the comment section.
My deepest and sincerest.
Exactly. This one's from Barnacle Boy. You haven't read my review I sent on Instagram yet, so I'll write another now. 5 stars. I'm currently in rehab, mental health, and this pod is the only way I keep up with the outside. I hope there's still a world out there when I get out. Perfect pod. That's what I'm saying.
Might not be. The way things are going?
Hitto, keeping people sane.
Yeah, no, keeping people sane, but I can't, listen, we can do a lot, but I can't guarantee the world will still be here next week.
Exactly. But
that's why you have to savor every episode and get to it as early as possible through patreon.com.
But you know what I can guarantee will be here next week, at least on Sunday. The new episodes.
The sermon.
Exactly. So Barnacle Boy, I hope you make it through whatever you're going through, as well as anyone else out here struggling with mental health.
Yeah, look at that. Before we get into the episode, I will say that we did our movie night last Thursday.
Resounding success.
My Son Hunter, goated movie.
Fucking gas.
Cinema.
It made Hunter Biden. It made Hunter Biden not only look cool again, common right-wing failure, but they went out of their way to make Hunter Biden a sympathetic character in their propaganda film against Hunter Biden.
A tragic hero, I'd say.
A tragic hero, exactly, precisely. Oh my goodness, man.
And they also made Joe Biden look kind of cool. Like, he looked competent.
Yeah,
he didn't stutter once.
He was scheming.
Yeah, he was
scheming. They opened the movie with him diving into a swimming pool. I know my president is not doing that.
Oh, he can't even make it down a staircase. And like, look, movie was absolutely goated. If you were there, you know. But thank you if you did come out. I thought it was a great time. We'll make sure we plan another one of these soon. Highly requested as Lady Ballers. We'll have to find a way to watch that without giving any patronage to the Daily Wire, because I don't want to pay them anything.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll find a way to do it. But thank you for coming out, and let's get into the news. First, we got to talk about the college protests. So, as we talked about last week, campus protests have been gripping the nation as students hold demonstrations, set up encampments, and even occupy buildings in an effort to get their universities to divest from Israel. Last week, I'll note, we got called out in our YouTube comment section.
It happened like the next day.
Yeah. Well, because I said, these students are setting up encampments. It's not like they're occupying buildings. At the time, they weren't.
Yeah.
I should have checked the receipts and checked the records, the history books, because it's a common practice, especially at Columbia, as we'll talk about, to set up occupations within buildings.
Yes.
And then 2 days after I said that, they set up an occupation in a building.
You know, you can't fault us. Another reason why you should always check out the Sunday sermon and listen on Sundays so that you're up to date with information that we're up to date with.
It's not as bad as the Tucker Carlson one.
No, that's our take that has aged the worst, quickest ever.
Well, I mean, and if that's the worst one we've had, the worst aged one we've had, I think we're doing fine.
I think so too.
This one was more just a logical progression. So they did occupy a building, at least at Columbia, and as we'll talk about, still doesn't justify the insane crackdown that we've been seeing.
No, not at
all. Simply does not. I want to talk about Columbia and UCLA as a sort of case study, but just know there's a lot of other universities that have had a massive amount of arrests. There's been a lot of police crackdowns, even just like straight up violence from counter protesters or police on these various campuses. But I want to look at Columbia and UCLA specifically because I think there's some interesting things to talk about there. We'll talk about what Biden said at the end, which was very bad.
Yes.
And just keep in mind that I'm not trying to focus on these because I want to ignore the others, but simply because he's in one podcast episode and the 90 to 120 minutes that we got, we can't cover everything.
There's like 50 of these things that have sprouted up across the country.
Impressive still.
I do think it's funny looking at the map and seeing just huge sections of states that don't have any protests at any of their colleges or any like major protests at their colleges. But it's the UCLA and the Columbia ones feel like the most representative of the majority. Yeah. And also things have escalated the most here in really almost all senses of what could escalate.
Yeah.
And that kind of, they're very representative of what's going on.
An interesting fold for both of these is they're both in Democratic states.
Yes.
Like
Democrat-run cities.
We covered University of Florida and University of Texas, Austin last week. Both Republican states, both with governors that have basically said, if we see protesters, you're getting kicked out of school.
Yeah.
Right? Banishment for 3 years. We saw that in Florida. But it's interesting to me, Columbia and UCLA are both in Democratic states that ostensibly should care about at least students' right to free speech a little bit more than, say, DeSantis or Abbott would. But it seems like that simply isn't the case.
And I guess we don't have governors coming out and saying the awful things that DeSantis and Abbott said, but we do have mayors coming out and speaking.
And the action of police in these states is functionally the same.
Yeah.
There's not much of it. I mean, we don't have people on horseback, but students are getting brutalized, as we'll talk about. It's and I think not much of a difference.
Overall, there have been, last time I checked, about 2,300 arrests across the country related to these protests.
2,300?
2,300 students.
I must have had an outdated figure. I read a New York Times article the other day where it said 800. So it must have, the count must have gone up.
Crazy.
Must have read that before the UCLA campus tore down.
Basically.
So focusing on Columbia first, last week, dozens of Columbia protesters were arrested after occupying and barricading Hamilton Hall. Helmeted police with riot gear marched through Manhattan and then onto campus. They ended up breaking doors and glass, which is like, property damage. I thought we cared about property damage.
I would be willing to bet that the NYPD did more property damage than any of these protesters did.
Did you see the video of them tossing furniture out the door to get rid of the barricade?
Out the door?
Well, yeah,
we couldn't just move it?
Right, like they had like chairs stacked up and stuff on doors.
Yeah, like all of these students are trained to do throughout all of our lives.
They're using their active shooter training
to
our
protect
Alice
themselves. Training.
And then like there was a bunch of chairs stacked up in front of some doorways, and cops were just like tossing the chairs out of the door.
Yeah.
Like these wooden chairs, just throwing them. And it's like, we clearly don't care about property damage.
So sick. Well, it's actually cool when cops do it, though.
Well, they're doing it for right reasons.
And they're doing it because they want to look cool.
Yeah, so the cops were breaking glass and breaking doors so that they could get into the building. I think a lot of them went in through like a second floor window. I saw they had like a ladder reaching up to it, so they couldn't get in through the main entrance.
Massive fucking truck, like a fire truck, but all black. Murdered out, if you aptly named.
Yeah, pretty sick. And then they ended up arresting a lot of those inside. There's this really shocking image of NYPD hauling away a bunch of protesters, and those protesters had zip ties on their hands. I guess they ran out of handcuffs.
Oh, wow.
These protesters were loaded onto a bus, and I'm guessing taken to a police precinct where they were charged.
Taken to Rikers.
Yeah, immediately thrown in Rikers. Yeah, they're not getting out. Now, this represents the functional end of the Columbia protests. Campus admin afterwards asked the NYPD, and I mean the actual NYPD, not like campus cops, right? For those of you that aren't in college, haven't been to college, a lot of universities have their campus police that are specifically for the campus.
And they suck.
And then there's also, they're awful. Yeah. And then there's also city police, right, of the city that the campus is in. So the campus asked the actual NYPD, New York's finest, to stay on campus for the 2 days following to, quote, and this is from the president of the university, maintain order and ensure that encampments are not reestablished.
It's funny that they kicked out one encampment to just put another one on. Now it's just the NYPD chilling on campus. Yeah, an increased police presence on campus is going to be infinitely more disruptive than, I don't know, at worst, like an annoying protest in a hall that I don't go to.
Before, the campus was being occupied by 19-year-olds that pay to be there.
Exactly.
And now it's occupied by fucking 45-year-olds
that nobody likes. Yeah. That nobody likes.
Nobody. It's good.
Interesting. And it's like, while we're talking about the NYPD, I'd like to take a moment to talk about them specifically, because New York's finest has truly proven that they are not the finest when it comes to rhetoric around these issues.
Right.
And after they cleared Hamilton Hall and ended the encampment, the NYPD decided to release an almost 5-minute long hype video depicting their heroic efforts that night. And I do got to warn our audio only listeners real quick that there are like a couple sections. We're fucking watching it.
Okay.
That's what we do on this goddamn show here.
We watch.
We talk about real news.
We observe.
We're playing the video. There's some absolute gold in there, but there are some segments that are just music. I will narrate over them, but we gotta roll this clip.
All right. Let me pull this up.
So good. Matt Binder posted it on Facebook. Posted it on Twitter. If you want to go check it out for yourself.
Here we go.
Look at that dramatic ass music.
So now, right there,
Eric Adams.
That's right.
Hamilton Hall. He's on top of it.
And the image right now is just someone waving a Palestinian flag.
That's Amsterdam Avenue.
These are just cops posted up in the fucking situation room.
It's one guy waving a flag.
Yeah. They're acting like this is like a terrorist. And right now we're seeing the situation room, and the cops are planning how they're going to enter Hamilton Hall.
I believe that all the entrances are somehow barricaded.
This is so corny, dog.
We believe the entrance will have the least resistance.
They thought they made this. They made them look good.
We need to go to the entrance. We have the least resistance. No fucking shit, dog.
We're not going to be moving.
Right. You got some planned process up there.
Yeah. We want to start getting them.
The video gets so much better right here.
Not the edit.
Look at the little switch up. Yeah. We got the riot troopers, baby.
Holy shit, dog.
Dressed in black, murdered out, ready to get these 19-year-olds. They are taking back Hamilton Hall.
Oh my god.
What is this stock? They Googled epic music.
Yep.
It's good, and this is a video of them just going in and breaking down doors, breking the glass to get in.
Oh yeah, okay, here's the videos I was talking about.
And there are some.
We're inside of the Hamilton building in the Columbia University. We're on the 3rd floor of the methodically going through the building, looking for the student protesters that took over this building. As you can see, the emergency services behind us conducting operations. We're checking each floor. We're checking each door.
Checking every.
Looking over here, you can see that they have set up sort of an encampment inside of the classroom. There's sleeping bags all over the place.
Sleeping bags and chairs.
They got sleeping bags on the floor. Yeah, that's good. You can see they've been sleeping here.
Exactly. Oh my God. This is a known Hamas tactic.
And when we actually came in here, they actually had the desk barricaded up to the window so that thinking that we were going to come in and get them.
Now they're just breaking doors.
As professional as can be, making sure everything is safe before we move on. Feel totally comfortable, totally safe with these guys. This is who you call when the police need help.
Interesting how he's talking about as they're moving through Hamilton Hall, we are trying to make sure everything is safe. Everything is totally safe here. Talking about this unit they brought in. This is who you call when police need help. Something that they didn't talk about in this video that happened while they were raiding Hamilton Hall was an accidental discharge of one of the cops' firearms.
Wait, why did they even have guns?
Bro had his gun out while he was moving through the barricade and fucking just, I don't know, slipped up and accidentally shot his gun.
Oh my God.
Nobody was hurt. Nobody was hurt. Importantly, they say there were only cops around when it happened, but they had to open an investigation into the accidental discharge. No one else is talking about that. Very interesting.
And like, wait, but why do they even need guns? They know what they're dealing with.
Exactly. Kids in fucking sleeping bags.
Uh-huh.
And there was an interesting shot in here where the camera's sitting there framed through a broken window looking at a cop. I would bet money that the cops broke that window to get into the room. Are you kidding me?
We see there's video of them breaking doors and breaking glass.
They're trying to frame this destruction as if it's the students. I'm watching you do it, dog.
This is good.
It's great.
Because like, who is this working on? Nobody likes the NYPD.
Exactly.
Like conservatives don't because New York.
Well, this is
we don't because NYPD.
This is masturbatory.
Yeah,
like, that's all that this is.
And the fact that they're thinking, okay, Columbia has asked for our help, NYU has asked for our help. Let's also make a PR video. Who gets paid for this?
Like this is what tax dollars are going for. Oh,
Eric Adams' approval rating is already at like 30%. Like this isn't helping.
So fucking good. But there are more bangers in here. It's not even Like, what are they doing there? They have the buzzsaws out? Yeah, the videos of them arresting a student with a fucking, like, Vera Bradley backpack on.
Is that a stroller?
It's good, man. It's just, like, they brought the camera crew in. It's like fucking Civil War.
All right, 10:35. We're on the campus of Columbia in the tent city, which you see is cleared.
The tent city.
Just a remarkable plan and execution by the NYPD, and more importantly, these cops on the perimeter who got this secured. Special thanks to our emergency service, our SRG group, second to none. As of right now, this campus is secure by NYPD personnel. This is how we get it done.
This is not a tent city, this is New York City. It's our city. And if you're thinking about doing something like this, take a look around, see how fast we cleared it out. This could be you.
This could be you? That's what I was saying.
It smells bad. It just reeks. And no student, nobody should have to endure this and being on the campus. Like I said before, lawlessness, that's what this, we thought it was symbolizes. And we're not going to have lawlessness in our city. So Columbia reached out to us. We came in here, we took action, and this is the result of our action. To any other individuals that want to protest, there are other ways to do it besides
if you want to protest, then you had to stop himself.
And living like this. This is not the way to get your point across. If you're thinking about setting up tents anyplace else in the city, think again, because colleges will reach out to us, and we'll come there and we'll strike you, take you to jail, like we did over here. Thank you. Have a good night.
That's fucking crazy.
Jesus Christ, dog.
It absolutely blew my mind, and especially that last minute there. There are just so many bangers, right? This is New York City. This is not a tent city. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, this is Eric Adams' hate for the homelessness absolutely bleeding through into every aspect. And they're one step away from saying, "Oh, you want to camp out here? You better not camp out here. You better not camp out on the subway, or else you're out of here. You're going to Rikers."
It's just unbelievable that they think showing footage of them having a teenager, I'm guessing, a college student, handcuffed with zip ties,
somebody who probably can't drink,
is going to make them look good. What the fuck are we talking about? Jesus Christ, man, that's bad.
Absolutely. And it's like the way that thumb ass motherfucker was just like talking about this, like, we got this campus secure. Look at these guys on the perimeter. Everything is safe and secure. They're acting like there was just an active shooter on campus.
They don't do this for an active shooter.
I swear to God, the Lansing, Detroit PD, when there was an active shooter on MSU's campus, weren't talking like this after they secured the threat. They were not nearly as dramatic for actually doing a good thing. And these motherfuckers come through and oh my God. And they thought this was a good look.
It's also not like the camp isn't illegal. I know Columbia is a private university, but these are like students that go to Columbia in these tents. Like, this is their space.
And it's like that long, it's a common area for students to hang out at.
That's what it was designed for.
Oh,
like
my
it's
goodness.
designed for demonstrations and events like this.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's crazy, man.
It blew my mind. But you know what? You leave it to a New York cop to be the most out of touch person in the country. Like, that's crazy. So
God,
good.
dog. I don't know how Democrats look at this and just think like, yeah, this is fine.
I don't know how conservatives look at this and say, yeah, Eric Adams is a Democrat.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't understand.
Dude, going farther than Greg Abbott.
I'm saying the rhetoric here is crazy. And also, we have a NYPD deputy commissioner, Tariq Shepard, went on MSNBC's show Morning Joe.
Oh, I fucking hate Morning Joe.
Yeah.
Did you keep going? I have a story about that.
It's good. And they displayed some chains that protesters used to help barricade the hall. They wrapped some, like, they displayed a bike lock that they used to, like, secure doors around the hall. Because, again, they barricaded themselves in. And this guy, Tariq Shepard, said, quote, he showed it. He brought a prop to Morning Joe. He takes the chain, shows it to the camera. He says, quote, this is not what students bring to school. This is what professionals bring to campuses and universities. These are heavy industrial chains that were locked with bike locks. And this is what we encountered on every door inside of Hamilton Hall. Crazy statement, right? Kind of a scary statement, right? And the chain that he's showing, it's a big industrial chain. It's like the side of my forearm. Kind of freaky.
Hamas-funded massive chain.
Hamas-funded chain. You know,
big Hamas.
We got a cop out here saying this is what professionals use. Like, you know, whoa, that carries some weight. People were pretty quick to point out, though, that the exact lock that he showed on this program was that only could have been brought by a professional is endorsed by Columbia University. They recommend it on their safety and theft prevention website, and the university sells the exact locks to their students at discount.
That's awesome.
So fucking good, dude.
And like, we shouldn't have to know this.
No.
Cops should be able to do the background research and be like, you know, they probably bought this because they were told to before.
Or you know, they shouldn't just lie and just get out here and create this narrative of professional outside agitators, whatever the fuck that means, coming into campuses and doing all of this.
And it reminds me how in the same breath they can say that these protesters are all entitled and they're wasting their parents' money, and also wonder where the tents came from and if this was like funded by Hamas or Iran or something like that. It's like, okay, you think that they're wasting their parents' money. Don't you think that their parents probably dropped $40 on a tent for them to use?
Yeah.
Like, let's be fucking real. Or maybe some of the rich students went out and bought a bunch of tents. This it's absurd to make these claims.
Oh, absolutely.
To imply that like there's some like professional or underground element that's making this happen. No, your students are just pissed at you.
And it's also like these protests were very unambiguously started by students. Outside agitators aren't just coming in and setting up. Sure, theoretically they could, but never once has that really happened on a college campus. Were there some protesters at these protests that were arrested that were not students at the university? Yes, but that's something that's just naturally going to happen when movements grow and get bigger. More people are going to show up and offer support. The vast majority of people at these protests are students, though, and that's verifiable.
Well, and specifically at Columbia, I'm going to talk about Hamilton Hall in a second, but it started as an encampment, which wasn't really receiving national news.
Yeah.
And then the police cracked down on them, arrested a bunch of people, and then everyone else started doing encampments.
Yes.
Like, it's specifically the violent crackdown in arrests, which people were let off right after that pissed a lot of people off and made these protests grow.
Which is crazy.
It's not like Iran is giving them millions of dollars to make this happen. It's your fault. It's the police's fault and the administration's fault for making these students even more angry.
And then the NYPD has the audacity to come through and frame themselves as these brave, courageous heroes excuse for breaking this bike lock that every student at Columbia has who has a bike, and going in and doing more property damage than the students to break into this hall and secure this hall. And we secured the perimeter of Columbia. You know, we're proud of that. Our boys in blue, our brave ones out there.
And not being able to maintain your trigger finger when you're hunting for students.
Oh my, absolutely zero trigger discipline.
That's just crazy.
Bro can't move through debris without accidentally firing.
And like all the videos, they showed maybe one student in all those videos, and that student was already detained.
Yeah.
Everything else was just like, look at these chairs flipped over. Look at this broken glass that we probably broke. Look at these sleeping bags on the floor. Nothing there showed me that it was a violent protest.
No, and that's the other thing. The audacity to stop the frame and have the guy speak over 3 sleeping bags set up in a room.
Yeah.
Dog, it looks like a sleepover. It looks like when my middle school fucking did like a night where you could sleep at the school.
It looks tamer than I thought it would.
Absolutely.
Are you kidding? Like, I would have thought like, graffiti, they like, the way they were framed, you would think that there was like graffiti. They're destroying stuff. They're writing like, I don't know, messages in support of Hamas on the whiteboards. None of that was true.
Yeah.
None of that was true.
They would have shown it if it was fucking true.
Exactly.
Like, believe you me, they would have shown every little bit of anything they could to frame these protesters in a bad or anti-Semitic light.
I'm honestly surprised they didn't write some messages themselves and then be like, come over here real quick. That's actually a tried and true method of the U.S. government.
And the NYPD specifically. Yeah. Planting evidence. Come on.
I remember when I learned about the coup we did in Guatemala, there was this one part where like the group that we were funding seized the Capitol.
Yeah.
And then they intentionally placed Soviet-funded textbooks in the Capitol. And they were like, well, look what we found. The Soviet Union's a part of this government.
Well, it's just like going through a house that's been destroyed by your missiles and finding a perfectly intact iPad with Adolf Hitler as the lock screen. It's almost like finding a copy of Mein Kampf in the children's room of a house that has again been bombed with annotations in what, perfect Hebrew or perfect English or
Arabic,
something?
yeah,
Arabic.
Perfectly written Arabic with highlighter and sticky notes.
Yes.
Yeah. They do train together after all. So not surprising we see similarities.
So
this
good,
is
man.
Like an IDF level propaganda video too.
It is. This is I gotta say this is up there with sperm retrieval units. A goated story, you know what I'm saying? And I can't let all this slide without talking about America's favorite Democrat mayor. I say Democrat very loosely here, Eric Adams.
Dino.
Because he had this to say specifically about this notion of outside agitators. Quote, "There's a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of New York City."
Did he just do anti-Semitism?
Brother,
this is a global plot to radicalize the youth?
Stick to your lane. One, you're not the governor of New York. You're the mayor of New York City. You are in no way the guy to classify, to diagnose these global issues, right? And one, what a way to speak in the vaguest terms possible to get basically anyone on your side. Oh my goodness, man. What a fucking nothing burger.
That's almost like bar for bar, like JQ posting. Like, well, who's the one that's indoctrinating these kids? Is George Soros funding these tents? Like, what are we talking about?
I don't know. And it's also crazy because it's like the radicalizing the youth rhetoric when it comes from conservatives like Eric Adams usually refers to college campuses. But they called you.
Yeah, it was the administrators.
They called you. They told you to do this, and they're probably writing off all the property damage you did.
Well, yeah, and it's like last week we talked about how colleges are hierarchical and very conservative in the application of the rules, and we got some pushback from the clips that we posted. People basically saying like, no, they're pretty woke, they're pretty liberal. It's like, okay, the faculty can be liberal, sometimes leftist, sometimes you even find one or two Marxists in like the political science department or something like that. But faculty don't control campus rules.
No.
Faculty don't call the NYPD and have them stage like an operation on campus.
Yeah, it wasn't a professor that organized. It wasn't a professor sitting in the fucking situation room at NYPD headquarters planning through like, oh, I've taught at Hamilton Hall. You go through this entrance if you go back here. That's not what's going on. Yeah. They're acting like this is the fucking raid on bin Laden. I'm sorry, it's crazy. And then I can't let this guy slide. Eric Adams then went on to virtue signal about these protesters. They took down the American flag. And I just can't stand for
God,
that. And
dog.
I think it was at City College, New York. That's what it's called, right? Or CUNY?
Yeah.
City
College, yep.
City College of New York. Some protesters, I guess, took down the American flag for a flagpole and put up, I think, a flag for Palestine. Mm-hmm. There's a video that got posted on, I think, the deputy commissioner of the NYPD's Twitter. That was like, look at our brave boys taking down this terrorist flag or some shit like that and hoisting up the American flag.
Bitch, all you do is pull the rope.
I'm saying.
Shut up.
They're literally acting like they just retook some fucking territory that an Iranian satellite terrorist group came to America and took over.
Well, they're acting like they're the picture of the World War II troops raising the flag.
Not Hiroshima or something like that.
They're raising the flag. Well, and that was also contrived, by the way.
That's also the famous version is a fake picture. God, man, it's good.
That's
it's
funny.
Just flag posting always gets me.
The protesters should have put up like a Palestinian version of the American flag.
Oh,
you know how there's
true.
the pride flag, but it's like it's like the American flag, but it's made like gay or whatever.
Yeah.
They should do that, but make it Palestine.
But make it terrorist.
Exactly.
Precisely.
Now, the discourse here, of course, is about the legitimacy of occupying and in some cases destroying property. And while it does seem radical to some for students to occupy Hamilton Hall at Columbia University, I want to note that this same exact building was occupied during several different protest movements. Like the same
famous
Hamilton Hall is famous for being occupied. All of this is from Reuters. In 1968, students occupied the same building in protest of the Vietnam War. And more radical than today, most recently, they didn't let the dean leave for an entire night. They had a hostage.
Students took the dean of the college hostage.
Yep. And this is something that is codified in the university's library. This isn't some hidden history or conspiracy theory. Columbia University has this moment codified in their university's history.
It's like
library.
a moment they were proud of, or claimed to be proud of, while they say the administration at the time wasn't for these things, but looking back, we are, because, you know, all wars are bad except the current one. All protests are good except the current one.
Exactly. In 1972, again in protest of the Vietnam War, students occupied and barricaded the building, not for a day, not for a night, but for an entire week.
Nice.
Until cops kicked them out. And then in 1985, 150 students barricaded again the same building for 3 weeks, locking the doors with chains and padlocks in protest of Colombia's involvement in apartheid in South Africa.
Interesting.
The truth is that this is a tried and true method of Columbia students specifically trying to enact change. This is something that's been done before, not only at the same exact university, but at the same exact building. And it's not clear to me why we can look at anti-Vietnam War protest actions, and we can look at the actions of anti-apartheid South Africa protesters, and we can recognize, okay, maybe what they were doing was radical, but it was ultimately a good thing. They were ultimately on the wrong side, or the right side of history. But we can't look at what students are doing now and also recognize this truth as well. Why is it that we can look at one and say that's good and justified, but we look at this one and say they're evil criminals that the NYPD needs to crack down on? And that's why it feels like to me, when we're talking about methods, we're talking about the protest and if the protests are effective, the argument we're really having isn't about methods at all. It's just about if people actually believe there's a genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anybody on the right, or I suppose defending Israel, because we got a lot of Democrats that are against these protests as well. I feel like a lot of the Zionists don't actually care for the argument about if protesting is justified or legitimate in this case. All they care about is the fact that they don't want American policy on Israel to change at all. Like, we're not talking about the same thing, because when I say, look, previous protest movements have done this, sure, maybe it's extreme, but it's a legitimate and tried and true method of protesting, and they just dismiss it. Like, I feel like we're not even talking about the same thing anymore.
I just feel like logic or any sort of analysis goes out the way the moment anybody's fifis get hurt. You know, the moment any person in power is made uncomfortable, they will absolutely refuse to acknowledge any of these things.
Yeah.
Because you can look at it, and there was did you watch the Hassan Asmongold debate that happened this week?
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
It's like 2 hours and 30 minutes.
It's bad.
He brings up the sit-ins, and a lot of people have been bringing up the sit-ins of the civil rights movement. The sit-ins were not popular when they were happening. No act
explicitly illegal, by the way.
Yes. No act of civil disobedience, no matter how tame or how violent, has ever been popular while it was happening.
Yeah, and I also want to note that when you get arrested for protesting, you're never arrested for protesting.
Yes.
You are hit with trespassing charges or disturbing the peace or attacking a cop or something like that, right? They're never going to hit you with charge protesting because that's not legal. They can't do that. They make up something else. And in the case of a lot of these students, they're hit with trespassing charges that are then dropped a day later because they're bogus and they just are designed to get you to shut up and take you out of the moment. Yeah. That's all it's for. It's to silence you. It's an intimidation tactic.
It's also... when speaking of just taking over Hamilton Hall and things like that, I think it is important to know classes aren't going on right now.
Yeah, that's true.
They did not disrupt any students in their functions at the university. Or maybe they disrupted 2 or 3 who maybe had to go in there after or in between semesters. None of that happened. Not only did that not happen in that instance, it just didn't happen in general. Columbia, as the college, the administration chose to move classes online.
Like a week and a half ago.
Yes, these students did not disrupt any of the flow of movement on campus. It was the administration, and them taking over this building was not them stopping students from doing the things that they are at the university to do. It was functionally a vacant building.
Yeah.
Nothing was going on there.
And it has historical symbolism.
Yes.
Right? Like, I guarantee you the reason they chose that building to take over is because it's been done before, like 4 different times throughout history. And every time it was done for a cause that eventually was vindicated by history.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating to me because, again, I don't feel like we're not actually having a debate about the legitimacy of certain methods of protesting because we're talking about literally the same thing. For the same reasons has been done several times. And I think people are making a lot of civil war comparisons. We've done it too, or civil rights comparisons, and we've done the same thing. I think it's more comparable actually to apartheid South Africa protests.
Being foreign policy related?
Right, exactly. Because we weren't involved militarily in the same way we're not involved militarily in Israel, but we were providing support. American companies were operating and stuff like this. They did the same thing for that too.
Yeah.
Like the same thing, the same building for the same reasons. Yet when it's happening right now, that's what makes people uncomfortable. And for people that aren't ideologically Zionist, all I can chalk it up to is cowardice, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're Zionist, you're going to reject anything that anybody does about Israel because you want Israel to maintain its sort of power and influence in U.S. politics. But if you're not committed to Israel as a sort of colonial project, then you're just squeamish because it's happening right now in real time. But you can look back at history and be fine with it. It's a form of cowardice that I think is just really disgusting.
It's because when you look back at history, the civil rights protests, the apartheid South Africa protests, the Vietnam War protests, none of that affects like my day-to-day life right now or their day-to-day lives right now. This doesn't even, but it's something that they kind of have to hear about. And I just think ultimately it comes down to this like law and order rhetoric is just such a disease, right? Because, I maybe this is controversial to say, but immoral laws should not be respected. And there's also something to say when it comes to protests. Civil disobedience was the cornerstone of the civil rights movement.
It's what they get praised for.
Exactly, for their acts of civil disobedience. 2,400 people getting arrested in Birmingham at one protest, things like that, letter from the Birmingham jail, all that came out from that. Like, civil disobedience is never going to be lawful. That's the point.
Yes. Well, and that's the other point I wanted to make on like occupying property is that if you are taking over a building, right, you can reasonably expect to be arrested in a way that's fundamentally different to just protesting, right? A lot of these protesters say in Texas, we're just arrested for protesting. But when you take over a building, you can reasonably expect to be arrested. But
trespassing, damage of property.
Sometimes that's the point. It's a form of civil disobedience meant to draw the attention of the public to a certain issue, which you are willing to get arrested for because you think it's worth it, right? And that's just the thing I don't understand is like we can look back at the sit-ins, which were explicitly illegal, and recognize that what they were doing was right despite them breaking the law. But we look at students breaking the law now. If I'm guessing they're going to be hit with some kind of trespassing charge that sticks, we look at them breaking the law now, and again, we just can't see that they're in the right in the same way that previous movements were in the right. I feel like I'm going crazy talking about this.
It's like even if I'm skipping ahead a little bit to things that Joe Biden has said, things that many people in power you have the right to protest, but you don't have the right to break the law. It's kind of interesting because any protest, if it gets any amount of size at all, you will be able to say that this breaks the law. Any amount of people gathering could be loitering. Any amount of people gathering doing this could be whatever. But again, when we look at history and we look at all of these very important protests, they were successful almost because they broke the law. They were successful. Part of the civil rights movement was successful because of the abhorrent responses from the state, because firefighters came out and were hosing down protesters with high-pressure hoses. All of these things, all the awful things that the police were doing, it was part of the point.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that we can look back at, say, the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King Jr. and say he was doing what's right is because the more radical actions of, say, Malcolm X and the Black Panthers are there for it to be juxtaposed against.
Yeah.
So we can say, wow, MLK, even though MLK himself gets very whitewashed, we can still look back and reflect on the more radical and the more tame elements and accept MLK for being this, hero of history. And I think that's in, 40, 50 years, that's how we're going to look back and see this, is we're going to see the more radical actions and think, maybe they took it pretty far, but ultimately they were right. The broad movement was right.
It is just so interesting to see how over the years this radical action has died down, but not necessarily the responses from the state. Like
it's the same. Yeah.
This is the tamest protest that has happened of the 4 that we've talked about.
Yes.
This is the tamest nationwide college campus protest that has gone on. There are really little to no credible reports of protesters engaging in violence against Jewish students or other students or doing anything other than occupying a building in the most extreme cases. Students in 2024 are not taking deans hostage.
Well, yeah, and there was one credible case that I saw. It was somebody who was involved in the protest at, I think, Columbia, who posted on TikTok that, Zionists should die or something like that.
Yeah,
and
wrong,
it got 40 likes and was hyper-focused on by Fox News and even liberal media. It's ridiculous. And on Morning Joe, you brought him up earlier. I was watching a clip of Morning Joe and whoever he's with, the woman, the blonde woman, and they started off by playing a video of a Columbia protester in 1968 talking about the civil rights movement, why they've taken over buildings, why they're being so disruptive. And he accepted that was analogous to current protests.
Okay.
And then he said, "Where are the adults at? This is a student that is disobeying the rules. Where are the adults in the room? We need to get control of this campus." So he was fully accepting the comparison, but he was saying they were wrong for it back then and now.
Wrong for it back then and now is insane.
Yes, I thought that was just beautiful.
That's libertarian levels of just.
It's bad. I also want to know on occupying property. I think a lot of people are ignoring the question of what made them occupy this property to begin with.
Yes.
And would they have done this had they not faced a crackdown at the beginning of their protest movement back in mid-April?
Yeah.
I don't think they would have been driven to occupy Hamilton Hall had they just been listened to by administration.
Absolutely.
Or at the very least, had they not been immediately arrested, a lot of them arrested at the hands of the police, ordered to come on campus by the administration. I don't think this would have happened.
Because it is also important to note, was it not at Columbia where administration announced that they had reached a deal with some of the protesters to sort of get rid of the encampment or something, and they would put to a vote in the fall whether or not they would reconsider their investments or they'd get an advisory council?
I think the encampment people rejected the deal.
They did?
I think so.
I know, because there was a deal at Brown University. There were a couple universities that actually made deals. Okay.
Yeah. And I think the critical take here is that, like you said, breaking the law is not always immoral.
Yeah.
The law is our best shot at legislating morality, but sometimes you got to break the law. And it's true that it's not the case that we can design property laws in such a way to protect these protesters. Yeah. I just don't see how you would do that. But I also would not call these protesters morally wrong, despite the fact that they will get charged with crimes for what they did.
Again, it's just, that's the entire point of civil disobedience. When you engage in civil disobedience, part of that engagement is accepting that what I'm doing is against the law. I could be reasonably charged for this. However, my act in breaking this law is not more immoral than whatever it is that I'm protesting for.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna ever look at somebody who is trespassing during a protest and be like, "Oh man, you got a criminal record. You should not be employed."
Yeah. So that's that on Hamilton Hall, and now we're gonna move on to UCLA. And before we get into UCLA's crackdown, which was really bad, which wasn't even really, it was a crackdown at the hands of the police a little bit later, but was more of a war. Or a battle between
UCLA
protesters and counter-protesters.
is where the violence actually broke out.
It was bad, yeah. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But I want to, because this has been sort of an upsetting episode. I want to take a break to laugh for a little bit.
I love laughing.
We got something fun to laugh at. We've been covering we've covered different elements, if it's okay to occupy a building, the sort of morality around civil disobedience and such. And one of the main questions of this sort of debacle the last few weeks, about a month now, has been the sort of amicability of protesters.
Okay.
why aren't they allowing me to go into these camps?
Yes.
Why won't they let me get to class even though those allegations have been very much over-exaggerated?
Even though historically no protest group has ever allowed anybody to get inside their protest.
You can't just go, like, they know what you're doing. And, you know, we have a prime example of somebody trying to get on UCLA's campus to get into these encampments and just asking questions. These mean, evil Hamas-supporting protesters just won't let them in. And I think we should take a listen. This is from Monica Tucker, a sort of, I guess, Zionist content creator is what she seems like. It's about 1.5 minutes, and I think this video is excellent. It's everything I've ever wanted to see.
Oh, I love that.
So
I love that.
Let's take a moment to listen, and then we can share our thoughts on it.
We've been seeing all over the news all the craziness that's happening on college campuses, especially at UCLA, so I decided to come here for myself. Do you mind if I interview?
I'm not going to talk to media.
Excuse me, do you guys want to tell me what's going on here?
No, sorry. We're not letting any media in the camp, just so you know.
Okay, we were just standing outside, just trying to... Are we allowed to ask you guys a few questions about it? A lot of us just don't feel comfortable.
I can direct you to media liaison.
Yes. We're not gonna interview with you today. We're not gonna engage with people that are gonna be pushing us. Never seen anything like this in my life. No, agitators aren't allowed. Talk to one of our media. They won't speak to me. No one will speak to me. There's a desk over there with me. I've spoken to them. They won't speak to me. Well, then we can try again. I've tried, and this lady specifically is telling me I'm an agitator. Don't engage with agitators. I'm just trying to understand what you're protesting. For some reason, no one from your guys' team will let you guys speak, and I don't know why you guys can't speak to me.
Is she crying?
This is so intimidating and scary for you guys to be standing here. I literally have walked around for the past 2 hours just asking peaceful questions like, what's going on here today? Why are you guys here? And no one can speak to me. And you guys are laughing. I don't understand how this is funny. I genuinely wanted to learn from you. And I wish we could have ended in a hug. That's actually what I hope from this. That's my dream from all of this, that we can understand each other.
I think we need more barricade, guys.
That's the most genuine example of crocodile tears that I've ever seen before.
She pulled up and said, I had a dream.
I've never seen anything like this, a well-organized protest.
She pulled up to milk these protesters for content and started crying when she couldn't get it.
Well, because she realized the bag, she's going to lose out on the bag for this.
That's fantastic.
Oh,
and she said this is intimidation or this is intimidating all you just standing here. It's like, dog, these are 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
19-year-old college students that probably get nervous to talk on the phone to buy a pizza.
And it's also like you're getting nervous standing here. You're saying you're scared right now. Turn around.
Yeah, you don't have to be there.
Like you are facing the encampment that they're blocking you from entering. Mm-hmm. You can just leave.
Well, yeah, especially because I looked it up. She's 31. She's not a college student.
Adult?
Yes.
Oh my God.
She doesn't go to class there. She can't make the argument that like, oh, I'm a student and I need to get to class. She's literally just there to agitate and start sobbing when she can.
I'm someone who has no ties to this university.
Yeah. Just extreme discipline from all these 19-year-olds standing at maybe 5'6", and she's terrified.
You know what? I wanted a hug.
Yeah.
They are not big stepping with their size 7 men's on. Like, I'm sorry, you can walk away.
It's just, I loved this video. It's so good. It's just exactly what I imagine these agitators to be like. Just pulling up, being annoying, being mad that you can't just enter the camp all willy-nilly, and then crying and leaving.
Man, I'd never embarrass myself like that.
And she posted it herself.
People need more shame.
She posted that to her own Twitter, and I just screen capped it because I thought it was good. I was like, this is going on the show.
Golly, man, we have the people who can't actually order their own coffee, and then we have these people. Mm-hmm. We need to meet in the middle.
We got the people who are scared to order a coffee, and then the others that always yell at the baristas.
Oh, God, man.
There's just no middle ground anymore.
That's where the real division is.
Now we got to talk about the kind of worst parts of UCLA, the somehow more insane story out of the two campuses we'll talk about today. I'd say it got real bad at UCLA over the past few days.
UCLA biting Columbia's flow and making it worse. Mm-hmm.
So I'm pulling here from the LA Times. Last Tuesday, late at night, a swarm of counter-protesters arrived at the UCLA encampment, an encampment that was very similar to what Columbia was doing, what other universities have been doing. Shortly thereafter, counter-protesters started getting violent and trying to break down the camp. People inside the camp sent appeals for help, saying they were basically under attack. And I want to be clear, the counter-protesters are who pulled up and started the violence here.
Yes, and I want to be clear, the people in the camp were under attack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's videos clear as day showing counter-protesters kicking the barricades, trying to tear the barricades down, throwing things at students. Campus police, so the university police, were on the scene basically doing nothing. And I'm not just making that up. I have a quote here from the LA Times that says, quote, "The Daily Bruin reports a small group of university police were on the scene. The paper quotes UCLA Police Chief John Thomas as saying the department had 5 to 6 officers on duty at the time. Officers came under attack while trying to help an injured person, so they left," the Daily Bruin reports.
Just remember, the Supreme Court has codified that the cops have no obligation to step into harm's way to protect you.
Yeah.
Just remember that when we're thinking about this. They're just sitting there. One, we're supposed to back the blue. We're supposed to respect their heroism and their great sacrifice. Yeah. But in these instances, they just watch. There was one video of a counter protester coming in and beating people in the camp with a 2x4.
Yes, yes.
Just comical levels of violence.
Yeah, and what do you mean you're not stepping in? You're the cops.
You have a gun or some shit. I don't know.
Well, and you're like a figure of authority. What do you, on campus? This is what you're here for.
Exactly.
What do you mean you're not stepping in?
Oh my god.
Ridiculous. Counter protesters also began shooting fireworks into the camp, which
counter protesters shoot bombs into the camp.
Yeah, no, that's a fire hazard.
Explosive.
Yeah.
A literal explosive.
Actual violence. Both sides started using some kind of pepper spray or some kind of aerosol. I don't know exactly what it was. Of course, campers using it defensively, and the counter-protesters using it as a weapon, pretty clearly. LA Times also reported that a makeshift medical facility was set up inside of the camp to treat students who could not see after being sprayed. There was this one image of one of the campers having milk poured on her eyes because apparently that helps when you get sprayed by something.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy. Also, the LA Times noted that a group of unarmed security guards were pictured just watching.
Amazing.
So that's pretty awesome. A little more excusable as security guards compared to cops, but still.
Yeah.
Security.
What are you securing?
What?
Yeah. What are you securing?
The LAPD arrived on the scene at 1:30. All of this started at like a 10:30, by the way. So this is just hours later after counter-protesters showed up. And they didn't intervene for an hour once they got there.
And they are just watching counter-protesters go and literally start fights with people in the encampment.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah, no, they're just yelling and fighting. It's pretty crazy. So all of this goes down. Eventually, the LAPD intervenes. I don't know how many arrests were made, although I guarantee you not every counter-protester was arrested that should have been. And then 2 days later, on Thursday of last week, police returned to the camp and tore it all down, arresting students that were a part of the encampment. Mm-hmm. So here we have police allowing counter-protesters to terrorize and fight the campers, then police coming back to destroy the camp 2 days later. All while, of course, these students were being peaceful on their own campus. UCLA is a public institution. Pretty awful. These peaceful campers, unambiguously peaceful campers here, were attacked by counter-protesters while police watched.
Yes, verifiably peaceful.
Yes.
There are not reports of the UCLA protesters going out and terrorizing people. Yeah. There are not reports of the UCLA protesters beating people up, blocking people, really doing anything but sitting on the fucking lawn. Mm-hmm. But there are reports of counter-protesters coming in and doing things like literally pulling an old lady to the side
on video
and beating her up. Like that is something that the counter-protests are doing, and the counter-protests literally coming in, agitating them, and beating the shit out of protesters.
Got it on video.
All on video.
Got it on video.
Oh my!
And look, like to the extent that this is sort of more broad than just UCLA, but to the extent, as we've said before, that protesters had been doing anti-Semitism at all, like we can say that's bad, right?
Of course,
we can condemn instances of people saying bigoted things, and we always will do that. But to see dozens of counter-protesters brutalize students at the encampment of UCLA while campus police and security guards and LAPD were just watching is crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just sort of the flip scenario that we've been talking about, right? Because these encampments have been framed as stopping Jewish students from getting to school. They're explicitly supporting terrorism or doing terrorism. They are being anti-Semitic on purpose. But in reality, it's the counter-protesters that are unambiguously attacking people inside of these camps. Mm-hmm. It's not that campers are attacking students that are just trying to get to class at UCLA or Columbia or wherever else. It seems like a completely flipped dynamic that the media just doesn't care about.
And that was the prevailing narrative last week when we first started covering these things. When the protests first broke out, the big narrative was encampments spark up at colleges across the company. They're blocking Jewish students from getting to class, something that was untrue, something that did not happen.
Not even verifiable, by the way. How do you claim that? How do you prove it?
How do you just spot one out of the crowd? I don't think people can really do that. You must be doing something to identify yourself as not Jewish but a Zionist. And even then, they're not blocking you from getting to class, dog.
Walk around.
I would like to point to the administration that told you literally can't go anymore. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Or the media would hyper focus on, like you said, an individual instance of one protester at one of these campuses across the country doing one thing that was bad and that I condemn.
Yeah, we can condemn it.
I can.
We can
condemn it.
And it
does not speak to the character of the movement.
It simply doesn't, yeah. Speaking about some other crackdowns that have happened across the country, the University of Florida last week arrested students for using the lawn as a protesting space. I think there's a group of them sitting on the lawn and protesting.
Felony trespass.
Well, and it's funny because we read that list of what was allowed at the University of Florida. This is one of the few things they could do.
Oh.
Looks like you can't do it.
Nice.
Because they got arrested.
I love that.
University of Washington, St. Louis had a significant crackdown. They arrested over 100 people, which is pretty crazy. And then Cal Poly Humboldt, I think this is a California university, had dozens of students arrested and even detained a journalist. During their raids on these encampments. So
very much like the IDF.
Yeah.
It's
really
funny
bad.
how the rhetoric around this is somewhat similar to the rhetoric surrounding the broader genocide that Israel is doing. The side that is being aggressed upon has these allegations of everyone being a terrorist or terrorist supporter levied against them, all to justify a state coming in and doing insane, disproportionate levels of violence against them.
Yeah, and bar for bar, the same shit they did to anti-apartheid protesters, anti-Vietnam War protesters. They also called them terrorists, said they were un-American, said they were just kids that didn't know what was going on, that needed to grow up and understand the real world. All the same shit.
Yeah.
None of it's new, which is why it's even that much more frustrating that people look at this, look back at history, say that's cool, then look at this and say, oh, that's not cool.
Yeah.
In fact, that's terrorism and evil.
It'll be so vindicating, I don't know, 50 years down the line to look back on my phone and see, oh, yeah, I was actually a part of this thing. I had good opinions back then.
Now we got to talk about, as the My Son Hunter film put it, the big man.
The big man, yeah.
The big guy.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Biden making it really hard to have our position.
to say that, I'll leave it at our position.
Yeah.
I will not elaborate any more on that statement.
Look,
this guy wants to lose.
I'm an electoralist. I think engaging in electoralism is good, but you're making it real hard to convince people to do anything at all this election season if this is how you're acting.
He is trying to lose. He actively wants to lose.
Feels that way.
This is if we're sticking with Vietnam protest, if we're sticking to the protest comparisons, this is very much to Joe Biden what Vietnam was to LBJ.
And you know who said that exact thing?
Who?
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie
said this is Joe Biden's personal Vietnam.
My goodness.
And a lot of Democrats got very angry at him for that.
Well, it's true. And it is just what's happening.
There's been, I'm sure there's a few more progressives that have been out there in support of these protests, but there's been 3 people. Bernie, of course, has been in support. He's been saying, stop focusing on these students and focus on like what we're helping to cause in Gaza. Yeah. AOC, I think, went to the Columbia protest, or maybe NYU.
Outside agitator.
Which is, if anyone's an outside agitator, Congress people. And then Rashida Tlaib, just the undisputed GOAT in the House of Representatives, came out and just had a really good speech about how we're terrorizing these students and we're not letting them practice their First Amendment right. She's in the minority, clearly. Maybe she'll get censured again for doing this.
Oh, God.
But I think it's important historically that she comes out against this thing. But the people in government, in actual government, on the correct side here, few and far between.
Oh, yeah. And, if we're to get back to the big guy, love his statements.
Joe Biden had a small press conference just a couple of days ago last week addressing the protests. He's been sort of silent on this. He had a small statement that he gave to some publication before where he just said, like, anti-Semitism's bad, but students have a right to protest and we should try to understand them. He didn't say anything since then. And then this press conference came along. It's about 4 minutes long, where he characterized these campus protests as violent and anti-Semitic. He started off by saying everyone's got the First Amendment right, but you can't be violent, you can't be anti-Semitic, sort of implying that these protests are that. He said, and this is just a horrible quote, he said, quote, "Dissent cannot lead to disorder," which to me is just fascistic, authoritarian at the very least, because if you're protesting, if the protest is any good, you're causing disorder. That's the point.
It's quite literally just law and order rhetoric.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's real bad. He also said you have a right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos. Again, implying that these protesters are causing chaos or doing something far worse than just protesting. And he ended on, and this wasn't even him, somebody asked him, a journalist that was there asked him if he wants the National Guard called in. He said no, which is the bare minimum. Thankfully, he didn't say, yeah, we're considering it, but he flat out said no, the National Guard won't be used. But the thing here is like, a lot of people have been conflating the term fascism for what's happening right now. Yep. And for reasons I'll get into, we are not living in a fascist state, but we're certainly getting there, and Democrats are not helping. But Biden himself is not a fascist. But like we've been saying from literally the first episode that we titled Biden Fumbling the Bag, yes. Joe Biden and Democrats, liberals generally, give rise to fascists. And it's moments like this that remind us, because by not coming out directly against these police crackdowns, Joe Biden normalizes this kind of treatment for protesters. So when a more reactionary politician gets the chance or gets into power, say Donald Trump wins, it seems more normal or more okay to crack down on protesters. What this does, what Joe Biden has functionally done, is sort of push the range of acceptable state action against protesters further to the right.
Yeah.
Because he didn't come out directly saying that students have a right to protest and cops shouldn't be doing anything. He didn't say that he was in support of these protesters. He framed them as being violent. He took the line that a lot in the media are taking right now. And by not defending the rights of these students, and certainly by not managing the sort of underlying crisis, which is what we're doing, facilitating in Gaza, you give fascists space to breathe and make their ideas more politically acceptable or make their ideas salient. It's the same thing that we've been arguing about immigration for the last few months. By totally capitulating to the right on the issue of immigration with that bill that we covered in many different episodes, you are allowing far-right ideas to continue to grow. It pushes the Overton window further to the right, and it alienates your own base. And we've argued for a long time that fascists and liberals are not the same, but liberals often aid in leading the nation towards fascism because of their inability to push back against fascist forces, and because they often stop us, the left, from doing the thing that they should be doing. Right? All liberals really know how to do is advocate for voting. And while we think voting has its place,
absolutely,
it's still important. It is in our system, mere harm reduction. And at this point, is more to stave off encroaching fascism than it is to actually defeat fascism, because we got to do far more to actually defeat fascists. Our electoral system hasn't changed. Biden still has to win over Donald Trump, but this doesn't mean that Biden's making it very easy to vote for him or for anybody to convince people that they need to go out and vote for Joe Biden. We don't literally live in a fascist state right now. Things can and would get worse under Donald Trump, but Joe Biden and Democrats that are falling in line with him are certainly making it more likely that he loses, and it's going to be entirely his fault.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be able to understand these dynamics, and Joe Biden is just completely feeding in to everyone's anxieties and to this idea that Republicans will somehow be better. It's bad.
He is actively putting up hurdles for people to want to vote for him.
Yeah.
And it's really 101 what not to do when running for re-election. And it blows my mind that the best case scenario in November is 4 more years of this guy. What a world we've come to.
And to be clear, I don't expect Joe Biden to come out here wearing a keffiyeh and saying from the river to the, that's not going to, Joe Biden's not going to do that.
Yes.
To be clear, I don't even expect him, as someone who has supported Israel, to come out here and say, I am in support of these students. Yeah. What the least he could have done is say directly to the Democratic governors, Republicans won't listen, but to Democratic governors, do not send police in on these students. These students should not have to face police violence. They shouldn't be kicked off. They're doing this on their campuses. If he would have said that, at the very least, he could have claimed to still be in support of free protest and sort of dissent from his own policy perspectives. But here he's characterizing students he's characterizing these protests as violent and in support of Hamas and inherently anti-Semitic. And that's what's really harmful and makes people unable to see the contrast between him and someone like Donald Trump, because people have been asking and are now asking even more, what's the difference? There is a difference, and we've articulated that difference, but it's real hard for people to see it when you're not making it clear.
You know, in the beginning of the episode, we talked about how nothing is black and white, and there are some gray things. Nothing is wholly bad. This is one thing that I would say, if he would have both sides of this, it would have been so much better.
Yeah.
If he would have come out and said, oh, anti-Semitism and violence by protesters is bad, but also police literally brutalizing 19-year-olds is also bad, infinitely better statement than what he put out.
And once again, he doesn't have to lie here like a Republican would to maintain their position. He's got to come out and say, yes, anti-Semitism is bad, but these protests are largely peaceful.
Yeah.
And they are being escalated. Violence is being escalated either by counter-protesters or by the police coming in and clashing with protesters. If he says that, That is a far better political environment for him, and it might not garner a ton of votes because he's still bad on Gaza, but at the very least, it doesn't push the Overton window further to the right.
Exactly.
That's all he has to come out and say.
And it's just like, man, I don't know what they're doing. Democratic strategist continues to be the fakest job. What are they doing? What?
Yeah. Look, there's a reason we're not liberals. There's a reason we don't lump ourselves in with liberals, right? We're distinct from them. It's just moments like this that really tell us why. And the one settling bit to me, like, I'm not completely doomer about this because this is how the state usually responds to protest movements like this. We saw it with Black Lives Matter, but Democrats sort of were a little bit more on a lot more on the side of BLM because Republicans were in office and they wanted to win the election. So they were less actively hostile towards BLM, which was better, certainly. But like during the Vietnam War, during protests for the civil rights movement and against apartheid in South Africa, this is also how the state responded. And honestly, the police response back then was worse than it is today. Yeah. It's bad today. Not to say that it's good today.
Things have somehow gotten better.
But it is still pretty bad. So that's the one piece that doesn't make me too worried, is that it's not unprecedented for police and states and even the president to respond this way. What is unprecedented is the looming threat of the looming reactionary fascist threat of the Republican Party in the background. That is something that's significant.
Yes.
Because if Joe Biden blows this, if the Democrats blow this, and Republicans win a trifecta, which could happen, that's the new thing that we really have to deal with.
Oh, absolutely. And not only for us, but also if what is going on in Israel continues to happen, Trump being in office, that is worse for that outcome.
Fundamentally, yeah.
He has already said that if he was in office when October 7th happened, this would be over quick. And we all should know what that means. It would be infinitely worse with Trump in office somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow, really.
And
oh my God.
And leftists, there's always going to be the kind of leftist that Biden can never please, right?
Of course.
And I'm not saying it's his responsibility to go out and win that person because what's the ContraPoints? She makes a lot of like YouTube video essay type things. There's this line she had where it was like a lot of leftists don't actually want power. They just want to forever critique power.
Oh, of course.
It's the same thing Marx said, by the way. He said something like philosophers this far have worked to understand history, but the point is to change it. He was also critiquing the same idea. You're never going to win all the leftists. It's simply impossible. We're an annoying bunch of people. But what he should be doing at the very least is not actively pushing everybody away, because the leftists that are mad at him, or even people that aren't leftists but are just pro-Palestine, are a part of the potential coalition, right? These aren't potential Trump voters. I don't think anywhere near even like 5% of people that are pro-Palestine are going to go and vote for Trump, but you need every vote you can get if you want to defeat Trump.
If anything, they're just potential not voters. They will just add to the, 1/3 of the voting population in America that does not participate in elections whatsoever.
Or they'll vote for Jill Stein, who fucking got arrested participating in these campus protests, by the way.
Jill Stein, that's awful for the Twitter
Great
stocks.
look for her.
Great look for her. Awful look for the annoying people on Twitter.
Yes.
Man.
But that's like, it's just, you got just a little bit better. That's all you got to do.
I'm saying, dude. And I also thought it was interesting at that same press conference. The first question that was asked was, are these protests doing anything to change your mind when it comes to Israel policy? No.
Yep.
Starkest, clearest no I've ever heard this guy say.
I think we can expect that, though.
I think so too, but it's something about just hearing it after this. It's very it's not reassuring. Considering how right now I think going on this week are more talks with Hamas or Hamas leaders and Israel and Egypt and I guess Antony Blinken.
There was just a deal that was proposed that Hamas agreed to that I think Israel rejected, by the way.
Oh,
that's
wow.
a bit of geopolitical news that I forgot to add into the show, but yeah.
We're surprised.
I think Israel responded, and this isn't an exact quote, but they responded with something along the lines of, there's no deal we'll agree to that is the end of the war, because they want to continue the war on Hamas.
Wow.
So it seems like that just means a deal is off the table.
And
it's bad.
They were Joe Biden. There was a moment, I want to say like a month ago or 3 weeks ago, where Joe Biden was getting out here and saying these things. He was saying like, we're trying to negotiate these parties or things. Various actors in the State Department were talking about how Israel's being very hard. Where is that now? They're so reactionary. It's like they see the protests and like, oh no, I don't fuck with this. So that means I'm gonna reaffirm my support for Israel.
Yeah, well, and it's like, that's the other thing is a lot of people will see these protests and be like, yeah, I'm even more pro genocide. What?
That's not a good look.
What do you mean?
That's not a good look for you.
Also, like this, we've talked about the quote unquote hug BB strategy, where it's like you don't criticize him publicly because that'll make him less likely to agree to deals privately. But I would think 7 months is enough to pilot that strategy, right?
I would think 35,000 dead Palestinians is enough. 15,000 dead children would probably be enough to say, maybe we should criticize him publicly. And now that Bibi has straight up said, we will not end this war, we will continue to kill civilians, I think that's a very, very good excuse to, say, impose a ceasefire, like we've been talking about for months at this point.
Or at the very least, just say, I'm not signing any more checks to Israel. Like, it's just not going to happen. Because he can do that.
He can do that day one. Yeah, he can say, I will never sign a bill ever again that gives Israel billions of dollars.
He just won't do it, though. And look, the last bit of, discourse around the protests is that I've been seeing moderates or liberals say things like, okay, the protesting is fine, but why are none of the protests condemning Hamas? Or why are none of the protesters protesting the actions of Hamas?
Wow, the Antony Blinken strategy, the UN strategy.
The U.S. doesn't give money to Hamas. Universities don't have deals with Hamas companies. Or they're not building universities in favor of Hamas. Like, that's not happening.
Golly.
Like, the people that are out here, I was listening to, I think it was Pod Save America. There was one guest on there that was like, I'm fine with protests. Students should be able to protest. But why can't they have one person with a sign that says, we also condemn Hamas?
That's what we do as a fucking joke,
brother,
to make fun of you.
Shut up.
Like, we do that every week to make fun of these people.
Yes.
That's insane.
Protests don't have to cover everything.
It's exactly. And it's like, before you go out and make any statement, it's like you have to get out and qualify it with, no, I don't mean this, I don't mean this, I don't mean that, I don't mean this doesn't include this, I also think this is bad, and this is bad too. It's ridiculous. You can't make statements on anything if the expectation is that you comment on everything.
Throat clear for 45 minutes before saying anything.
Oh my
goodness. It's a protest, and protests have to be done for something with a clear purpose. You're not going to get out here and have a sign that says, I condemn Hamas. Why would you waste the fucking cardboard space for that?
God damn, what a waste of money. Holy shit, man.
Waste of my time listening to that guest interview. That shit sucks.
A serious person?
Supposedly.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's really bad. There's also people out there that I think are on the left that are saying, like, well, why aren't we also protesting for the Congo? It's like, please, dog, one thing at a time.
I'm saying.
Not everything is the same thing. You gotta focus protests. Any form of collective action's got to be specific.
And it's also very fine to protest the current bad thing.
Yeah.
People talk about, you only want to talk about the current thing. Yeah. Yes, that's what's current. That's what's on people's minds. There is a cultural moment right now when it comes to support for Israel. Protests over the last however many months since October 7th, rhetoric since then from largely people on the left, the anti-Zionist camp, has swayed public opinion massively. Public opinion has swung like upwards of 10 points to be now anti-Zionist. Things are changing. Their cultural moment right now is about what's going on there. You would obfuscate any positive pressure that you could put on any politician, any positive effect that you could have on the American public, in their opinion, by saying, also there's all of these other different issues to focus on. And that's not to say those aren't issues.
Yeah.
It's not. It's to say that we need to capitalize on what's capitalizable.
Yeah, it was like one atrocity at a time.
Yes.
There's hundreds, if not thousands, of atrocities around the world, probably the fault of the U.S., that you could point out and say we need to talk about. And I'm willing to talk about those things, investigate, research those things. But when it comes to mass movements and mobilizing people, we only have so much time in the 24-hour news cycle. We only have so much political capital and political energy used that we can motivate people with. We got to focus.
Yes. And also,
like, what's happening in the Congo is bad. Child labor, also we can have our iPhones, very bad.
Awful.
But one thing at a time.
But also, I would have to say, we are not signing $30 billion packages to go to the condo to do child labor. We are signing $30 billion. I hope
not.
I pray. There's probably that amount of money going there from like Nestle or something. But we are actively signing legislation, giving money to Israel now. Not more than we ever have, but at a higher rate than we have in recent history.
Yeah. In some, when you're doing actual politics, when you're actually trying to affect change, you got to be concise.
Yes.
You can't, not to say that you shouldn't talk about the Congo, very important, deserves its attention. But if you're talking about Palestine, you got to talk about Palestine.
I mean, like, it's kind of the same reason why every time someone on Twitter calls for a general strike of literally every company ever, it never works.
Yeah,
like,
it can't.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Consumers need to be focused. Or like people will get on Twitter and it'll get like, I don't know, 10,000 likes, and it'll be or TikTok, it'll be something along the lines of, guys, if we just literally if everyone in the world does not leave their house on this Tuesday and nobody buys anything at all, we could do this much damage to the economy. I gotta go to work, brother.
Yeah.
I can't just not. Nobody can just not do anything. Like, this is not an organized movement. Maybe if you organized this a while ago and there were specific aims and specific goals, then yes, I could do it. But you can't address everything at once.
Yeah. And that's why protests, especially those like on college campuses, they have to have some degree of centralization.
And they've been great.
And they've been very coordinated and disciplined. You got to have people that are making decisions, or at least people that are deferred to make decisions or to speak to press or whatever else. You can't just say, everyone do this and expect it to happen. I'll also note that a lot of these protests, all of the protests on these college campuses are organic and for the most part spontaneous.
Yeah.
And I don't mean spontaneous in the sense that none of them have been planned. They've all been planned to some extent, but there's not like national coordination behind them.
No.
In the same way that other movements might have had some degree of coordination across different organizations.
There was not a national college students organization that is saying, okay, on this day, April the 18th, 2024, we are going to set up an encampment on the main lawn of whatever campus you're on. Columbia did it. Columbia got cracked down. People were pissed. People did it on their campuses. People were inspired and then did it on their campuses. It's very organic.
Yeah.
Very much student-led.
Do you ever think, I want to buy my way into heaven?
Always.
I want to buy my way into the good graces of the people that I'm listening to in my ears right now.
That's right.
You can do that if you head over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. And not only will you be supporting the show, not only will you get early access to all of the content that we produce, but you'll also get an ad-free experience on the Patreon every Sunday, every time we release an episode.
You'll be able to pull up to the sermon on Sunday, on the Lord's Day, to hear the gospel as it's spoken.
Yeah, no more being late, no more interruptions mid-episode if you're listening to this ad right now.
Exactly.
It's on patreon.com/headintheofficepod. It's one of the best ways to support the show. It's one of the longest enduring ways to support the show.
Help buy a pass from all the sins you've committed. Start coming to church.
Yeah.
And we can get things going.
Yeah, that's only if you head over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. It's in the description. It's there for you. Moving on to more bad stuff.
Yeah, moving on to talking about the things that these protesters are doing.
Exactly.
And that's anti-Semitism.
That's anti-Semitism. So last week, Congress did something. You know, we have a lot of problems in this country. Homelessness, food insecurity, student debt. And we like to contend with problems in Congress, but not any of the real ones.
Yeah, we like to have rigorous, long debate about those problems that stall the legislative process for year-long spans where nothing ever gets done about them because we just can't agree.
So far, this Congress has banned TikTok.
Yep.
And now they're going to offer a definition of anti-Semitism that, in a lot of ways, for a lot of components of it, it's like, it's accepted, normal.
For sure, yeah.
And then there's some that are just like, all right, this is clearly just because you hate the students.
Bat shit crazy, right? But, Congress can only ever get things done quick when they're good. So
exactly.
It must be good if they can get it done quick.
So last week, H.R. 6090, known as the Antisemitism Awareness Act, passed the House of Representatives by a vote of 320 to 91. The bill was introduced in October and is a direct response to ongoing campus protests. It was introduced in October because, pro-Palestine protests kicked off after October 7th. And then the bill, I guess, only garnered enough support to be passed recently. So it just got passed last week. What this bill does is define anti-Semitism for the purposes of rule enforcement for the Department of Education specifically. So I don't think there's any criminal statutes attached to this. It's just for the education industry in this country.
Really? Oh, so it's not like adding an additional discriminatory thing to Title VII or something like that?
I don't think. I think it's just schools. It's just school-related policies.
Interesting.
Yeah. But this bill, it doesn't offer its own definition of anti-Semitism. It outsources defining anti-Semitism to an organization called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, of which the United States is partner to.
Okay.
However, the IHRA defines anti-Semitism in some interesting ways.
All right.
They offered a bullet point list that I found on their website for what anti-Semitism is according to them. And it's like each of these things could be regarded as anti-Semitism. And I figured we could read some of these.
Okay.
Or all of these.
As we should.
A comprehensive list.
Dive into what's being legislated within our own country.
Well, look, I want to follow the rules.
Of course.
I want to follow the rules. So here's a list. Some of it's paraphrased just because they had some long definitions, but it means the same thing. Here's a list of how they want to define anti-Semitism. 1, calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or extremist view of religion.
I can get behind that.
I can agree.
That's something I can get behind for sure.
Demonizing Jews as a collective. Fair enough.
I also agree.
Accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even for acts committed by non-Jews. Again,
yes,
perfectly fine. Holocaust denial, of course, that's a classic. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel than to the interests of their own nation.
I can see.
Yeah, that's a classic.
I can totally see the line there for sure.
That's a classic anti-Semitic line. Is like, oh, you're more loyal to Israel than America.
I get it. I get it. Okay.
So we got that one. Denying Jewish. Here's the kicker one right here. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g., by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. That is a form of anti-Semitism according to this definition.
That's crazy. Denying the Jewish right of for their own self-determination by saying that Palestinians can't self-determine that they can drive on this road.
Exactly.
Because there are literally roads that Palestinians cannot drive on.
Yeah, it seems it would be, according to this definition, anti-Semitic to say Israel is an apartheid state. Right? Seems like you wouldn't be able to say that. Let's get through these last few, though. Applying double standards by requiring behavior from Israel not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation, which I like. Who determines what a double standard is?
It's also and also like very clearly, I know what they're talking about here. They're talking about Gaza, but I might remind this alliance that Gaza is not a democratic nation. It is a territory of Israel.
Yeah, Gaza is not its own state.
No,
it's a strip of land. Using symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, claiming Jews killed Jesus, or blood libel to characterize Israel.
We're back on
Israelis.
Track. We're back on track.
Well, we're about to get off track. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Apparently, you can't do that. And then finally, holding Jews collectively responsible for actions of the state of Israel. Most of these, perfectly fine.
Yes.
Things like Holocaust denial or using swastikas or blood libel as like a reason to hate Jews. Like, obviously, all of that bad.
Yeah.
And we don't endorse that.
Even holding any one Jew or any group of Jews responsible for what the state of Israel does, I also would think that that's anti-Semitic. That's what we argue by drawing the distinction between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. That's pretty good.
Yes. But the problem, of course, is that saying Israel is a racist state or an apartheid state is not anti-Semitic. Saying that, or making comparisons between Israeli policy and Nazi policy clearly is not anti-Semitic because you're not critiquing Judaism as a religion. You are critiquing Israel and the actions of the state of Israel as a government.
Yes.
Not of Jewish people broadly.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty clear. And it's strange that Congress would sort of outsource the definition of anti-Semitism in this way because it's really bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It seems to me like the bill is probably going to pass the Senate, then be signed into law by Joe Biden, which would, in this case, functionally make pro-Palestine protests on school campuses a form of anti-Semitism.
Wow, I just wonder what that means.
Yeah, well, probably it would probably open the doors up for more
like you can
suspensions
be
and expulsions
for this kind of speech, especially like at a public university, First Amendment rights and whatnot, protected speech.
It seems to me because these pro-Palestine protests are saying that Israel is an apartheid state, saying that they have explicitly racist policies like designed to separate Palestinians and Israelis, which is fundamentally true.
Unambiguously true.
An empirical question.
Explicitly true, codified into Israeli law.
And that's what pro-Palestinian protesters are saying. And if that's what they're saying, it seems that would be defined, according to this law, if it passes, as explicitly anti-Semitic language that they can be punished in some way for.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the point of the bill. It's a response to these college protests.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's really bad. Again, I don't think it involves any criminal statute, so it's not like you can get charged with harsher crimes for any of this. But I would imagine it makes expulsions, suspensions, or just general punishment at the hands of school administrators easier to do. Genuinely some Red Scare era tactics here.
Which is interesting because you could already be expelled or suspended for doing the the genuinely anti-Semitic things before.
Yeah, actual anti-Semitism already not allowed.
Already not allowed really anywhere. Like, if you're putting up swastikas in your school bathroom, you are going to get disciplined. If you are saying things about, if you are characterizing Jews in such a way within school or making fun of Jewish students in such a way, you are going to be disciplined already.
Yes.
But you weren't going to be disciplined for maybe arguing your history class that, Israel is doing apartheid here, X and Y. To prove that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And look, now there's a real issue with anti-Semitism in America. We've said it before. We've been covering for years how the right is very anti-Semitic.
Absolutely.
We covered ad nauseum when Kanye went full Nazi.
Absolutely. And what was it, Dr. Oz Hitler car?
Dr. Oz Hitler car.
Lake Hitler car.
Dr. Oz Hitler car. We've covered many small niche right-wing figures that have straight up just said Nazi things.
Yes.
I remember there was one who won a house seat, a blonde woman who won a house seat. And she was just saying a Hitler quote when she won.
Yeah.
She was just saying, like, we're doing this for the white kids or whatever.
There's been a couple of those, actually.
Yeah, so obviously anti-Semitism is an issue in America. And it is true that there's some anti-Semites that have tried to sort of couch themselves in the pro-Palestine movement.
Jackson Hinkle.
Because, yeah, exactly. They can say Israeli or they can say Zionist as a way to just say Jew and get away with it, right?
Yeah.
And to the extent that that's happening, again, I think that's really bad. But the vast majority of pro-Palestine protests and people are criticizing the state of Israel, not Jewish people as a whole. And a lot of people like to claim that there's this sort of thin line between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, but I just don't think that's true.
No.
I don't think the line is that thin at all. I think it's pretty obvious if you're critiquing the state of Israel or if you're being bigoted about Jewish people as a group.
Oh, absolutely. It very clear. Like,
yeah.
Not every Jewish person is a Zionist. One, I feel like that fact there kind of spits in the face of it, especially if we consider, I don't know, the modern makeup of these things. A lot of the kids at these pro-Palestinian protests are Jewish kids. There are Jewish student organizations that have thrown their weight behind the backs of these protests.
Yeah.
Like, there are Jewish people in Israel that protest Netanyahu's government, very unpopular government.
Yeah, it seems to me that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are two fundamentally different things.
Exactly. One is this group is doing something because they're this religion, they're this ethnicity, and that's why they're bad. And another is this group believes something that I think is wrong because it necessitates an ethno-state.
Yeah, no, yeah, and people, Zionists or just generally like liberals, will ask, well, when does something go from anti-Zionism to anti-Semitism? It's like when you're being anti-Semitic.
Exactly. Something
it's pretty obvious.
I can tell you the exact line where it crosses over from anti-Zionism to anti-Semitism when it becomes based on the immutable characteristics of the person you're criticizing.
Yes. Yeah.
When you say they're doing this because they're Jewish, like that's it.
Yeah.
It's a fine line in the sense that it's fine that I can see it.
Yeah.
It's a bold line, really.
When I say that you don't get to have an ethno-state, I'm not saying because you're Jewish you don't get an ethno-state. I'm saying nobody gets to have an ethno-state where you force one group of people to drive on different roads because they're not actually citizens.
Yeah.
Like that, I think is pretty obvious. And I don't know why, historically, for a long time, especially as the pro-Palestine movement has grown, this has been the line where it's like, well, it's a thin line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. What are you talking about? I can see it. It's right there.
And it's like, Israeli propaganda plays in this. Things like this play into the idea that there's a thin line between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism by classifying any form of anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism.
Yeah, no, people have rightly pointed out that this will make anti-Semitism worse.
Yeah.
You can't, because by saying that a critique of Israel as a racist state is explicitly anti-Semitic, you are saying that critiquing Israel is critiquing Jews.
Yeah.
Which means that you think Israel and Jews are the same thing,
and
not
like,
me.
I think you are doing more to remove the self-determination of Jewish people by saying that they cannot be compared to Nazis than you are by saying that Israel's an apartheid regime. And maybe stay with me here, because it's like, by saying that the Jewish people, or the Jewish state here, Israel, cannot act in such a horrendous way is to not see them as through their full humanity.
Yeah.
Humans can act in heinous ways. Any human can. You're removing that human self-determination by saying, no, you can't be evil.
Yeah, well, and even if it was the case that Israel was doing nothing comparable to what the Nazis did right now, is it not possible that they could?
Exactly.
Like, what are we talking about?
Any group could.
Yeah.
And to say that one specific group can't because they're this thing is definitionally anti-Semitic, actually.
And it's confusing to me because they say in here that equating the acts of Israel to the acts of all Jewish people is anti-Semitic, and I agree with that.
Yes.
Like you shouldn't equalize these things, make these things equal. But then later on, they say it is anti-Semitic to say that the state of Israel is a racist endeavor, which to me suggests that they do think what Israel does and what people say about Israel, or is saying negative things about Israel, is fundamentally anti-Semitic, meaning if you criticize Israel, you're criticizing Jewish people.
Yeah.
Which is it? You got to make up your mind. You can't have it both ways. It's
so silly.
It doesn't make much sense to me. And the House passed this bill.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Pass it quickly with the swiftness, too. Man, we can only ever pass bad things fast.
And it was interesting because I saw some DW Daily Wire folks come out against this.
Okay.
Ben Shapiro was not in favor. Matt Walsh was not in favor.
What did Ben Shapiro have to say?
I think Ben Shapiro just said, like, I'm in support of Israel, but this isn't the way to stop anti-Israel sentiment, which is fundamentally true.
Broken clocks and whatnot. Matt Walsh just wants to be anti-Semitic.
Well, he wants to be anti-Semitic. He dropped a 12-minute video that I watched on 2x speed because I was like, what? I saw it one morning and I was like, this guy's got to have something crazy to say. He had the take where he said that Americans should be able to criticize any country in any way that they want. Which
true.
To me seems like subtly Islamophobic. Like he wants to be able to say like you live in mud huts.
He wants to do what Ben Shapiro did to Palestinians a couple years back.
He wants to say things like how people in Dune say about the Fremen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But then he was mad about the part where it says you can't say that Jews killed Jesus because he said that is biblically true. Which, look, I'm not a Bible scholar. Romans killed Jesus, not the Jews. The anti-Semitic line is that Jews told the Romans to go and kill Jesus, which, some of them might have. But this doesn't mean that the Jews killed Jesus. The Romans were going to kill Jesus anyway.
Man, that's crazy.
That's biblical truth. I just think it's really funny that he's mad. He's like, we can't do blood libel?
What do you mean I can't? I can't literally pit these two groups against each other.
Yeah. So that was good. But that sums up the Antisemitism Awareness Act. We got a few good things we could talk about.
Yes, we do. Biden's desperate attempt to maybe win back some people that he's losing.
And it's sort of sad because these two accomplishments that we have to talk about is if Gaza wasn't happening and if he wasn't fine with the police crackdown, generational.
These would be great.
And these are huge, to be clear. The first one is he banned non-competes, I think 2 weeks ago. His Federal Trade Commission banned non-competes.
Which is
for everyone except, I think, executives, but fuck them. Who cares about the executives?
That makes sense. I understand non-competes in the sense that if you are genuinely privy to trade secrets that if you go somewhere else could damage the company in what way, I can get behind that. But when McDonald's or a fast food chain or a local restaurant makes people sign non-competes saying you can't work in the restaurant industry, one of the largest industries in the country.
Coercive.
For 2 years, that's a bit much.
And that's a generational change. These have been around for a long time. A lot of courts have ruled them many times as straight up unenforceable. But of course, the problem is that if you're a lowly worker looking to work in the same industry that you were already working in, you don't have the money to challenge this non-compete in court because that's going to take like a year.
You don't have the money or time to do any of that.
So rather than break the rule that you signed on to because you didn't have a choice, you just have to switch up and learn a new skill set, which isn't fair.
My girlfriend in college, she worked at like a gymnastics gym. She was like a coach for like kids gymnastics and stuff. They made her sign a non-compete.
Ridiculous.
Saying that within 25 miles, she would not be able to work for any other gymnastics gym. She made $12 an hour.
It just, it doesn't, like you learned how to do it. Why wouldn't you be able to go work somewhere else?
Exactly.
Explicitly anti-competitive behavior.
No trade secrets involved in teaching a gymnastics class. Oh my goodness, man.
Just something that's blatantly anti-free market. So it's good to see that that's going away. It's just an unambiguously pro-worker move.
Won't be in effect for at least a little bit, probably like next year, because I know the Chamber of Commerce
fucking demons, dog,
is trying to sue the FTC to say, no, actually, this is really good for workers and shit.
Oh my God. Not good, but a good thing that Biden is trying to do currently.
Exactly.
And then he also announced just a few days ago that he's going to look into or begin the process of...
The DEA is rescheduling weed.
Yeah, reclassifying marijuana, which is good. That will also take a while.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people get very angry that things don't happen quickly. I'm fine generally with like democracies working slow. That's just kind of how it goes. Unambiguously a good thing. Nobody should be in jail for using or selling marijuana or anything like that. It's disproportionately harmed Black Americans purposefully.
Yes.
another good thing, but the problem is like Gaza is just overshadowing all of this.
Oh, absolutely. It's genocide. The ultimate evil.
Yeah, I would say.
It's pretty hard for banning non-competes to overshadow that. And it's also with weed, it's rescheduling weed to, I think the DEA announced they want to move it from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3 drug, which would be along the lines of like ketamine and things. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow it to be pretty much prescribed. I think it'll also make it so that you can travel across state lines with it now.
And saying that it was ever Schedule 1.
It's Schedule 1 drugs are heroin and LSD.
And weed.
The most dangerous drugs, not on the underground markets. Absolutely ridiculous that we'd ever got to the point. However, should it be rescheduled or should it be descheduled? I'm not going to be that guy that's like a win is not a win, because this is a win. It's unambiguously good, but the Biden weed discourse is very much that issue that he's only using when he needs to get reelected.
Transparently. Yes.
Transparently.
I was just about to say that it is very clearly an attempt to get the young people back. And the thing here is like, okay, maybe 15 years ago, this is a big deal. But now everywhere people just use it and it's just assumed to be an okay thing. Exactly. Even in red states where it's still illegal and you can be charged with a crime for it, people are still using it pretty openly.
Oh, most popular issue in the country. And in New York, can't you just smoke a joint out in the open air in New York and it doesn't matter? I like that's the extent to their legalization. I thought when that came out, when that happened, conservatives were going to freak out. Talking about reefer madness again. The city smells like weed all the time. All these lazy high people walking around doing. None of that came out. Conservatives love weed.
Yeah,
everyone loves weed. Yes. Like it's just it's not
Except
a
Laura
thing.
Ingraham, yeah.
So I don't know. Other than Biden being 82, what's the holdup on actually just doing a good thing? Because descheduling weed, legalizing weed, or even decriminalizing weed is something that he could have done in his first 100 days that people would have remembered. Like, that's not one of these issues like maybe non-competes that could fly under the radar, or banning junk fees on airlines that people won't care about in 2 months.
Which is another thing that he did. And look, he's keeping it in his back. Maybe he kept it in his back pocket for so long, specifically to use it as like an electoral thing. Which is sort of what he did with student loans too, which, is kind of like grossly cynical.
I think that student loans, he was genuinely trying harder.
Yeah.
Because he kept it up even after the courts were going. He's still trying to make like avenues around this. I think that is an issue that he does earnestly care about. But weed, it's just like, really, man? And I can tell.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he can just do it, can't he? Or direct the DEA to do it, I suppose.
If he can direct the DEA to move it to a Schedule 3 drug, I would imagine he could direct them to deschedule it in general.
Or at least say, like, announce publicly that's what you want.
Yes.
At the very least, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, it's pretty obviously an attempt to win some votes back. And, before October 7th, or I suppose before our support for Israel got even more entrenched week by week, this could be like story of the week on this show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like these two stories back to back would be like, look, Joe Biden's not a Marxist or anything, but he's doing very good. But I mean, just with everything going on in Gaza, it doesn't like it matters, but it's not on our radar because so many other things are taking up the oxygen in the room.
That's not going to be in the history books, but this will be.
Yes.
Like this will be. And it's also like if it wasn't for Gaza, if it wasn't for Joe Biden being kind of a bad guy and having the worst opinion you could have on this issue and large swaths in the Democratic Party, if he could have been the guy to decriminalize or legalize weed at the federal level, unambiguously, he would have won the election. He would win the election in November. I would not question it or bat an eye.
Well, because of that and abortion, too.
Yes.
Like that would have, and we said this back before October 7th, I think our first debate watch party when we were watching the Republican debates. I said at the end, like, these Republicans tearing each other apart. Trump's probably going to win. He's going to have some steam. But look, Biden's looking real good.
Exactly.
Like I was confident at that point, but now, it's up in the air.
And then, boy, am I not. Oh my goodness, man.
Yeah, it's bad. And the last good news is Drake and Kendrick beef.
Drake and Kendrick beef we got an album worth of beef now.
It's good.
Honestly, within the last fucking 4 days, we've got an album worth of beef.
And it blows my mind that we've gone from fuck the big three, it's just Big Me to you should die in less than 2 months.
And
that's crazy.
If you maybe I'll leave it. If you guys want us to dive more into nuanced conversation about the beef, let us know and we will. I swear to God, we will dedicate a bonus episode, a segment to our nuanced discussions around the beef because I have some thoughts, I have some opinions, maybe some controversial ones.
Yeah, maybe we'll paywall it.
Absolutely.
Look, what our goal is to get political news to you all.
Exactly.
And if you want the music news.
Yeah, political, important content, absolutely free for everybody.
Fuck Fantano, you're coming to us.
Exactly, but if you want to hear my opinions on thrown out allegations on fatherhood, oh my goodness.
You want Gage's opinion on fatherhood. Songs crazy though, all of them.
Songs are crazy. They're good. Yeah. They're good. Some of the content may be a little questionable.
Yeah.
But the songs are good.
I think the best take here is that, not necessarily on the songs, but Drake got Kendrick to drop consistent.
Yes.
Kendrick got Drake to finally rap. And that's the real good thing about this beef.
And it's like J. Cole, my courage.
I'm so sorry.
I put my entire weight behind that courageous young man. It takes a lot to get out there and admit that you're wrong. And I called him a coward before, but after all the legitimate live fire ammunition that has been thrown out of here, he's got courage for accepting the negative PR that he was going to get.
And look, I don't take back what I said about his transphobic bars.
No, they're still corny.
They're still bad, and there's still no reason to put them in. But look, I thought it was funny. I was laughing at him for taking down, ever posting 7-minute drill, then taking it down, apologizing like 3 minutes later. But look, he was right to do it.
Absolutely.
He saw the future, and he was like, I cannot be involved in this.
And you know what? Maybe I will drop one of my hotter takes. I do think it's crazy. Obviously, J. Cole got flack for the transphobic bar, as he should have. I feel like there has genuinely been some homophobia coming out of the Kendrick camp.
Oh, yeah.
That I do think has flown a little bit under the radar because people are excited that Kendrick is dropping. I think the meat riders on both sides have kind of got...
Yeah, we're both sides in this issue.
I'm fence-sitting the issue. I you know what? I'll do it. I won't do it with politics, but I'll do it with the music beef. I think Kendrick is up in the beef, but I do think there has been some questionable things that Kendrick has said outside of the major allegations that are federal crimes.
And if you want more of our hot takes, you got to tell us.
You beg for it.
You got to tell us. Look, we're not a pop culture podcast.
Exactly.
But if you want us to be,
we could be.
I could be something else.
I could be whatever you want me to be.
I could be something I'm not.
Maybe I won't leave the left. Maybe I won't do that. Maybe that won't be my big grift. Maybe I could enter culture.
I'll just bust out music theory. I'll read like a book about it and be like, I know what I'm talking about.
Oh my God, look at this chord progression.
A minor.
I love chords. Oh.
Not going to say anything else.
Before
we leave this episode, we have to give a beautiful, beautiful thanks to our beautiful, beautiful patrons.
Absolutely, 100%. We could not do this without you. We would not be here for almost 3 years if it was not for Caden Kraut, Lord Tau the Radiant, Chris the Postman, Christy Beck, 40% Spite, Dylan B, Andrew Harris, Mike Chaplinsky, Mattias T, Omar Zuno, Clayton LaFed, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Toro Tari, Gavin Mayer Maldonado, Hunter W, Max Vesquez, Jacob Fergalaki, Jacob Rogers, Colton Mooberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Bagel Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cuts, Veryuk, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfish, and Benneth Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's Boyfriend, Jonathan Cassis, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarlson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Science, Aaron and His Gundam Gundams, Darth Father, Tailored for Content, Corey Chambers, Sewer Snack, Ellie Yen, Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, Emma the Dude Slayer, Veronica, aka V, Raxon, Ash Smith, The Grotler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sapphic, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, and Hope of Giants, AK Gone, Aquana Don,
Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Cammy, Tylen Freeman, Steak Daddy, Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C, Pab the Pab 69, Kayla Lowe, Anna Valenic, KCC, Say Yes to Wes, August, Particular Pickman, Sir Capalot, Jeff Sines, Howard the Duck, Brennan is Egg, JR, Drew Batchilder, Froggy Gumdrop, Zen doing their best, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, Sasha, MJ is Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Wallace 3000, Southwest Socialism, Jared Finch, Evil Vegan, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris E, Kishan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Dick Cheney and 3-inch Heels, Lalo Valesco, Particulon, Memfrez, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Classified Jones, Lauren, Uncrasmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, and my mom. Thank you all for supporting the show on Patreon. It'd be impossible without you. I photosynthesize in the studio lights.
Absolutely. This is how I recharge every week. Really. Oh, my goodness.
There's no set of white boys making a medium amount of money like we are. It's just not happening.
Not a single one. Not a single. No, there are no two white boys out there on one podcast covering politics like we do.
Not making a decent to okay amount of money.
Exactly. Making a money that can not substitute but
supplement.
Supplement.
There you go.
A regular income.
It's just us. Thanks for listening.
Have a great week.